The boardroom of Sterling Technologies was a temple of glass, steel, and testosterone. I adjusted the cuff of my ivory silk blouse, a gift to myself after my last successful project, and took a steady breath. On the massive screen behind me was my life's work for the past 18 months, Project Ether. Ether isn't just another data analytics platform, I began, my voice clear in the silent room. It's a predictive intelligence engine that learns corporate behavior patterns with 94% accuracy. It can forecast market shifts 6 months before they happen. I could see the captivated expressions around the table. The CFO leaned forward, the Chief Innovation Officer was nodding slowly. And, at the head of the table, CEO Julian Sterling watched me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Not with admiration, but with something hungrier. For 2 hours, I walked them through the algorithms, the beta test results, the patent applications. I showed them the projections, $1.2 billion in revenue within 3 years. A complete transformation of the tech landscape. When I finished, there was a moment of stunned silence, then applause. Julian stood, a slow smile spreading across his face. Astonishing work, Evelyn, he said, coming to stand beside me. He placed a proprietary hand on my shoulder. This is exactly the kind of visionary thinking we champion at Sterling. You should be very proud. I was, for a week, I floated through the office on a cloud of validation. My colleagues congratulated me. My assistant brought me coffee with a smile. Julian called me into his office daily for strategy sessions where he asked increasingly detailed questions about Ether's core architecture. Then, on a Tuesday morning, I was summoned to HR. Evelyn, said the HR director, a woman with a perpetually sympathetic expression that never reached her eyes. We need to discuss your position. My position? Has the board approved the Ether budget? She cleared her throat. There's been a strategic realignment. Project Ether, while innovative, doesn't align with Sterling's current operational roadmap. And unfortunately, your role as lead architect has been eliminated. The words didn't make sense at first. Eliminated, but the presentation ... Julian said ... Mr. Sterling has made the decision. We're offering a generous severance package contingent, of course, on you signing a comprehensive non-compete and non-disclosure agreement. She slid a thick document across the desk. You have 24 hours to decide. I walked back to my office in a daze. My keycard didn't work on the door. My assistant was already clearing out my belongings into a cardboard box. And then I saw it, the company-wide email from Julian, sent an hour earlier. Team, thrilled to announce our new flagship initiative, Project Titan, a revolutionary predictive intelligence platform spearheaded personally by me. This billion-dollar venture represents the future of Sterling. More details at the all-hands meeting tomorrow. Project Titan, my algorithms, my code, my vision. He hadn't just fired me, he had surgically removed me from my own creation and was preparing to present it as his brainchild. The betrayal was so complete, so coldly calculated, it felt like a physical blow. I took my box of belongings, the framed photo of my graduation, the succulent I'd nursed from a cutting, the notebooks filled with equations that were now his property, and walked out of Sterling Technologies for the last time. But as I stood on the sidewalk, watching employees stream into the gleaming tower, the numbness began to harden into something else. Something sharp and bright and dangerous. Julian Sterling thought he had taken everything. He didn't realize the most important part of Ether wasn't in the code. It was in the mind that had conceived it, and that mind was now free, angry, and uniquely motivated. The non-compete was brutal, 3 years in any related field, with geographical restrictions spanning the entire country. The severance was substantial hush money, really. Julian clearly expected me to take the money, disappear, and maybe become a yoga instructor. He didn't know my grandmother had been Helene Vance, founder of Vance Pharmaceuticals. He didn't know that when she died, she'd left her entire fortune, $87 million, in a trust I could access at age 30. My 30th birthday was in for months. I never touched the money, wanting to make my own way. Now, it would be my war chest. I moved into my grandmother's old penthouse, which had been sitting empty. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlook the same city's skyline, dominated by Sterling Tower. I set up my laptop on her antique writing desk. I couldn't compete with Project Titan directly, but I could evolve beyond it. Ether had one limitation I'd never solved. It required massive, centralized data farms. What if the intelligence was distributed? What if instead of a monolithic engine, it was a swarm? A decentralized network where each node learned and contributed, becoming more intelligent collectively. I called it Nexus. For 4 months, I lived in that penthouse like a ghost. I coded for 16 hours a day. I hired 3 former colleagues, brilliant minds Julian had also sidelined or fired as remote contractors, paying them from my savings. We communicated through encrypted channels. We built Nexus in the shadows. The day my trust fund unlocked, I incorporated Vance predictive systems. I rented a sleek office space 3 blocks from Sterling Tower, and I began poaching not Sterling's star employees, but their disillusioned ones. The engineers who were tired of Julian taking credit. The salespeople who'd been passed over for promotion. The ethical ones who'd questioned Project Titan's murky origins. Julian noticed. He sent a cease and desist letter, claiming Nexus violated his intellectual property. My lawyer, a razor-sharp litigator named Miriam Chen, laughed when she read it. His patent filings are based on your beta work, which has prior art documentation you smartly filed with a private timestamping service. He's the one infringing? Evelyn, we didn't sue, we just worked faster. The annual Tech Horizon conference was the industry's Super Bowl. Julian Sterling was slated to give the keynote, unveiling Project Titan to the world. Tickets were sold out, the buzz was deafening. He took the stage to a hero's welcome, arrogant in his tailored suit. Today, he boomed, we redefine possibility. As he began his demo, I slipped into the back of the auditorium. Miriam had secured me a press pass. The demo was good. It was my Ether, polished and rebranded. The audience was impressed. Then, during the Q&A, a young journalist from a tech blog stood up. Mr. Sterling, your platform shows remarkable similarities to concepts presented by your former employee, Evelyn Vance, 18 months ago. Can you comment on the origins of Project Titan? Julian's smile tightened. Evelyn was a junior contributor on early brainstorming. The vision, the architecture, the execution all Titan. We wish her well in her future endeavors. The lie was so smooth, so professional. I felt the old anger, but it was cold now, forged into a weapon. I walked to the mic stand at the side of the room, meant for audience questions. I took the microphone. Since my future endeavors are of such interest, Julian, perhaps I should share them. Every head in the room swiveled. Julian's face went blank with shock. Security started moving toward me, but Miriam stepped forward, showing them a conference organizer's badge sheet arranged for me to be an alternate speaker. I'm Evelyn Vance, I said, my voice amplified through the world-class sound system. And for the last 6 months, my company, Vance Predictive Systems, has been building what comes after predictive intelligence. I nodded to my lead engineer in the control booth. The giant screen behind Julian went dark, then lit up with the Nexus logo. Project Titan analyzes the past to predict the future. Nexus, I said, clicking a small remote, creates the future by orchestrating the present. What followed was a live demo that made Titan look obsolete. Nexus didn't just predict a supply chain disruption. It showed how to reroute shipments in real time across a decentralized network. It didn't just forecast a stock dip. It demonstrated micro-investments across thousands of nodes to capitalize on the volatility. The room was dead silent, then erupted. Julian stood frozen on stage, a king watching his castle walls crumble. I looked directly at him, mic still in hand. You took my idea, Julian, but you couldn't take my intellect. You couldn't take my resolve, and you definitely couldn't take my grandmother's money. The gasps were audible. The journalists were furiously typing. Effective today, I announced to the room, Nexus's core framework will be open-sourced. We believe innovation should elevate everyone, not be hoarded by one man who steals credit. That was the death knell. By open sourcing it, I made Titan commercially worthless. Why pay billions for Sterling's platform when a better one was free? I left the stage, walking past Julian, who was being mobbed by reporters shouting questions about intellectual theft. Our eyes met for a final second. The predator was now prey. 6 months later, Vance Predictive Systems went public. Sterling Technologies' stock plummeted. Julian was ousted by his own board. At the opening bell of my IPO, standing on the balcony of the exchange, I wore not ivory, but victory red. The quiet woman in the silk blouse had built a fortress from her stolen blueprint, and from its heights, she could finally enjoy the view.